Good day, everyone. Welcome to Black Logic. Hamas claims Israel turned down a deal to release all Gaza hostages, accusing Netanyahu of choosing war over peace. Trump lashes out at Netanyahu for breaking a ceasefire, saying Israel defied its advice and worsened the conflict. U.S. officials are reportedly angry at Netanyahu's unauthorized airstrikes in Syria, calling him unpredictable and reckless. New video footage shows Trump making graphic remarks about women, sparking fresh backlash amid election season. And this is going on between the 2016 season, going back a couple of years here. And one of Epstein's former girlfriends alleges inappropriate behavior by Trump, reigniting scandal ties between the two. And again, as we get more information and evidence verifiable when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and the president, we're definitely going to keep you updated right here on Black Logic. So Hamas military spokesman Abu Abia claims Israel, led by Netanyahu, turned down a comprehensive deal to free all captives at once and blames them for refusing humanitarian progress. And this has kind of been the ongoing case when Israel and Hamas, anytime Hamas and Israel get close to a ceasefire, that ceasefire is either signed into contract and then is vacated or is voided by Israel by some means or another. And this is what Hamas is stating, that Israel continues to break contract and ceasefire deals that they initially agreed to. And this reveals Israel's hardline stance, even amid mounting global pressure. And Palestinians claim the refusal signals that Netanyahu's preference for military escalation over peace, basically stating that Israel, by the way of Netanyahu, is a war state. They want to continue to oversee and to have the Palestinians in that region and using Hamas as an excuse to continue to occupy that region. So again, these are some of the top stories that I'm giving you guys, and only two this morning, because we're going to focus in on Israel as well as President Trump as it pertains to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, President Trump reportedly slammed Benjamin Netanyahu's rejection, echoed Hamas' claim, calling out the betrayal and accusing Israel of ignoring his calls. And Trump's outrage reflects his continued influence in the Middle East diplomacy, highlighting a clash of strategy between U.S. diplomacy and Israel's far-right cabinet. And U.S. officials, right, private labeled Netanyahu a madman for his aggressive Syrian bombardment that undermines Trump's foreign policy vision. And the rift between the U.S. diplomatic restraint and Israeli tactics indicates rising tensions, even in a Trump-aligned administration, and Trump himself is reportedly fuming. Trump is supposedly be outraged and angered by the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu. I wonder if this strained relationship, if this somewhat fractured relationship is going to cause President Trump to retract and pull back some of the resources and support that we've been garnering in Israel. Or we're going to move to another strategic state within the region in the Middle East to have a partnership that we can, again, have a foothold of intelligence, a foothold of military powers within the region, but nobody really knows because, again, President Trump is absolutely angered at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the case of just continuing to bomb countries, whether it be Hamas within the Gaza region or whether it be Syria. Again, President Trump publicly is trying to garner peace between all these three states. And it seems as though that Israel, by the way of Benjamin Netanyahu, because we can't blame the state of Israel for the act of one man or the act of one administration. Kind of reminds me of the United States of America, where everybody looks at Americans in a more evil and loom light than they have before because of the current presidency. And whether you voted for President Trump or not, you should not, in the world stage, be judged upon the actions of himself or his administration. But I digress because I believe that's very, very important. I do want to start bringing you guys video clips here because I think this is utterly important as we break down this next segment, because I want to give other accounts of different news media, and sometimes that's going to relish in liberal media as well as conservative media. So with that being said, let's move to the next clip. I just want you guys to listen in on this.
Do one more in the next 6 hours and 12 hours, and then we're done, right? And then at that point, Israel says, yes, but that's obviously just for them and not for us. And we're going to do many more bombing runs over Tehran, 8 or so, right? And Trump said, no, it's a ceasefire. You can't do those bombing runs. And Israel's like, what do you mean? We're above the law. No, that's for the suckers on the other side. We get them to stop firing on us, and then we just violate the ceasefire all day, all night. And Trump said, apparently, and this is shocking to a lot of people, I'm actually not shocked by it. Trump was like, no, you're going to do what I told you to do. Apparently had a call with Netanyahu where he ripped into him. So look, this is the part that I think is the positive thing about Trump. If you're on the left and you don't want to hear anything positive about him, I got it, brothers and sisters. But it's really important for the purposes of ending this war and ending the tragedies and the war crimes in Gaza, okay?
Now, the man on your screen is from TYT, the Young Turks, and everybody knows he's mostly Democratic in his takes. But the reason why this clip is important because he's given his unapologetic take that Trump is actually trying to do the right thing, which is saying a lot for him, essentially, because a lot of times they just lean one way, that Trump can do no right. But again, that's why he said they can understand if people on the left, his brothers and sisters, don't understand. But again, I will say that he's very, very neutral on this because, again, there's reports that Trump actually was furious and ripped into Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of the actions that he's taken in the Gaza region as well as Syria and even Tehran to a certain degree. So I believe that unbiased news media is very important, even when it's reporting from a far left source. And again, to kind of give you guys compare and contrast. Now, it states here that he bombs everything all the time. He said, fuming at madman Netanyahu after Syria strikes. This is important because, again, the rift between the U.S. and the diplomatic restraint against, with Israeli tactics, it indicates rising tensions between our two countries of the unwavering support that we have continued to give the state of Israel. And this is even in a Trump-aligned administration. So now we have actual reports that Trump is furious. Now, I'm going to get into the background of Benjamin Netanyahu because I think that's important. A lot of times when we look at people from the state of Israel, and you ask anyone who is Jewish or from the state of Israel or Israelite, you ask them, what's your race? They always say, I'm Jewish. And Jewish is basically an ethnic. Jewish is basically a religion. But when they state that they are Jewish, they are stating in matter of fact that this is a race. Now, I don't know any race that is Jewish. And again, this is not anti-Semitic. This is for clarity and transparency. Because according to the United States of America, and I got it. There's other countries that don't look at people based upon race or color or what the West deemed them as to be. But as it pertains to the United States of America, you have white, you have black, you have Asian, you have Hispanic, which is an ethnic, because when you are an ethnic in America as it pertains to Hispanics, you can be any race. And you can look that up in the U.S. Census Bureau when it talks about race. And I usually pop that up here, but not today, folks. I know you guys are very intelligent. You've probably seen it before. But Hispanic, you can be black, white. You can be, again, because of the many countries that the Spanish colonized and conquered. They have intertwined and mixed between all of these countries as it pertains to Central America mostly, okay? But again, a lot of the white people that you may see on your screen here, not stating that Benjamin Netanyahu is, but a lot of people from Spain, this is like regular white people who speak Spanish. But as it pertains to Hispanics, when we look at the phenotypes of let's say Mexicans or Costa Ricans or Dominicans, etc., you see there's a mixture there, and some of them are on the higher light side, and some of them are darker hue and complexion like myself. So that's why Hispanics are not quote unquote a race; they're predicated upon an ethnic. But when you talk to a Jewish person, because Jewish people come from all different demographics and all different racial backgrounds, but the depiction of a Jewish person, because of the highlighting of Ashkenazi Jews, they see mostly in light complexion, white color people. So again, when people are thinking about the race of a Jewish person, someone state that I'm Jewish, I'm not white. I'm Jewish, I'm not white. I necessarily don't know what that means, because for a long time, and I think this is imperative to note, for a long time when people looked at a person's race, they most associated their race with their country. So if you guys did any bit of traveling, let's say when we went to Kenya last year, or was it earlier this year? No, it was last year. My family and I went to Kenya last year, and we saw Indian Kenyans, people who are Asian from the country of India, who has, when you look at East Indian, that complexion, okay, so Asian, dark colored skin, but he also, his nationality was Kenyan. Even though his race is Asian, okay, his ancestry and heritage is Indian, and his phenotypes correlates with that, but his nationality is Kenyan. But he's not a typical Kenyan. He's not a sub-Saharan African Kenyan. I want you guys to make this clear distinction, because I'm leading somewhere here. Because when you look into Benjamin Netanyahu's history, and you just do a quick Google search of where he's from, okay? He was born in Tel Aviv. It says, Netanyahu was raised in West Jerusalem and the United States, no less. He returned to Israel in 1967 to join the Israeli Defense Force, also known as the IDF, and served in the Syria Makah Special Forces. Okay. So nothing about his race or ethnic other than he's from Israel. Again, you can make the correlation that he's Israeli, he's Jewish. All right, because we understand that the state of Israel, the majority religion are Jewish folk. But again, as it pertains, comes to race and ethnic, anytime, well, I won't say anytime, majority of the time that I've asked or spoke to a person from Israel, or they stated that they were Jewish, as if Jewish was a race. You don't have to do much digging, folks. It's very easy. So the only thing I did was look into the parents of Benjamin Netanyahu, even though he was born partially in the U.S. by the way of Minneapolis, partially, majority of the time in Israel, because he does speak Hebrew and he speaks English, fluently. You look into his parents. Now, this is Benjamin Netanyahu's father, Ben Zion, okay, Netanyahu, okay? But again, they changed their name. He changed their name. Listen to this. Now, Malowski, because they are from Polish descent. Now, Rennie, anytime you stated that, take for instance, if I said my wife is Polish, automatically people would think that they were white. Now, I understand that white is only, white is a race, but being from the state or the country of Poland, it's a nationality. But people will state that I'm Polish. Now, when you come to America and I state that I'm American, everyone knows that when you are American, you can be any race. But majority of these countries in Europe, especially Eastern Europe, okay, because again, this is very close to Russia, Belarus, all these different countries, is automatically associated with being white. Now, there was a story that I saw that a black woman who was actually born in Russia. Her family from the 1930s was born in Russia. Now, they actually came from the U.S. and went to Russia. Now, she moved to the U.S. and because of discrimination, she moved back to Russia. And when she moved back to Russia, within 1 year, She was tormented, she was persecuted, and she was actually assaulted by her neighbors, okay? Right in front of her child, no less. And she spoke fluent Russian because, again, her family from the 1930s, being a black woman, was Russian, okay? That was her nationality. So again, that's why all this pertains, because before they moved to Israel, before they converted into Judaism, okay, being Jewish, so to speak, not Judaism, excuse me. Yeah. They changed their name from Milowski to Netanyahu. So my question here is, and this is because of my ignorance and stupidity, when you have all these different people that came from all these European countries, that back in, I believe, 1948, where the state of Israel was constructed in that Palestinian region, and the majority of these people are from Europe. My only question is, the majority of Jewish people that are in the state of Israel, now, not the Ethiopians, not the dark complexion, melanated hue people, not those, but the people who look similar to Benjamin Netanyahu, my only question is, are they white or are they Jewish? And that's my only question. I just want to make that clear distinction, because I think a lot of people get this very conflicted and very confused. And believe it or not, folks, it's very, very simple. But let's move on, because we have a little bit more to cover here, and I want to make sure I cover it all. Now, just for historical references, I do want to show this video, and it does have some profane language. So there's your trigger warning. So if you have small children, or you don't really take kind to profanity and lewd language, you can just mute this, but keep the video on, because I think that this is going to speak for itself. And I want you guys to listen in on this. I want you to listen to every word, even though this may be difficult to hear.
Moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and fuck her. She was married.
It's huge news there.
No, Nancy.
Yeah.
No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. I can do anything.
Pull the ham.
Hello, how are you? Hi.
All right, that was the words allegedly from the president of the United States quite some time ago, him having a private conversation on the bus. Again, that should have probably never been revealed, but it is now public knowledge. Has been played from different news platforms, millions of views. Any platform you can find this clip from has been played millions of times, because this established a historical background of some of the actions that President Donald Trump stated that he does when it comes to beautiful women. And this is not to attack the president at all, but this is historical archive evidence of him stating certain actions that he does and how he goes about business. And even my wife, we went extensively about this particular story of this woman coming out 20, 30 some odd years later about the account and the interactions between President Trump, but Mr. Trump at the time, and Jeffrey Epstein. That this was supposedly Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, as she stayed around 4 or 5 months, and that President Trump, or Mr. Trump at the time, as they was visiting Trump at Trump Towers, that she was basically groped over the entire visit. And afterwards, Jeffrey Epstein was furious that she allowed Trump to fondle her and feel on her lady parts right there very publicly in a business office during broad daylight inside the office, while Jeffrey and President Trump, Mr. Trump at the time, was having a conversation. And at that time, he was feeling her up and down. And I'll give certain takes that my wife and I just kind of comb through this, because one question is this. A lot of people don't know how trauma works unless you have been through some form of trauma that's closely related to something you can correlate with. And again, everybody's trauma could be different, and there's a lot of similarities in different particular traumas. So I'm not trying to re-victimize the victim here, but even my wife will ask, just as well as, you know, other women, that why wait 20, 30 years? Just as well as some of the accusers in the Bill Cosby case. A lot of these women are waiting 20, 30 years after they find out that someone is running for public office, or someone is trying to buy a large corporation, that this person now has amount to billions of millions of dollars. And when someone actually comes out, of maybe possibly a victim, then you have all these other people with the carrots to come out because someone did. That's very possible. That's very possible. The question here is, this woman here, who was the ex-girlfriend of Epstein, why I am more inclined to believe her accounts, because she did get someone, quote unquote, world-renowned, who conducted a polygraph test that stated that the acts that she stated that occurred were true. After I let you hear quite a bit of this, I do have a question for you guys about the state of polygraphs and the certain questioning behind it. Listen in.
Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend speaking out tonight. Stacey Williams, a former Sports Illustrated model who dated Epstein in the early 90s, has spent time with both Epstein and Donald Trump together. In one disturbing alleged incident, which Williams went public with last year before the presidential election, Williams says Trump groped her in front of Epstein at Trump Tower in 1993. Here's what she told our Sunland Sarfati when she first broke her silence.
The second he was in front of me, he pulled me into him, and his hands were just on me and didn't come off. Then the hands started moving, and they were on the, on the side of my breasts, on my hips, back down to my butt, back up, sort of. Then, they were just on me the whole time. And I froze.
Williams also claimed that Epstein and Trump looked at each other and smiled during the alleged incident, which Williams says she now believes was coordinated and, quote, some kind of weird, twisted game. Trump denied Williams's allegations through his campaign at the time, which said in part, quote, it's obvious this fake story was contrived by Kamala Harris's campaign. And Stacey Williams is out front now to speak out for the first time since the uproar over Trump's handling of the Epstein case. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you know, Epstein is dominating the news once again, and his relationship with Trump is under scrutiny. While you were dating Epstein, can you tell us how close these two men were?
They were best friends. I dated Jeffrey for a period of more or less, I think about 4 or 5 months. And the only friend that he would mention every time we saw each other or had a phone conversation was Donald. And he would share a lot of anecdotes. I have plenty of anecdotes. And yeah, they were very close, and they were up to no good.
And how did Epstein talk about Trump? Sort of what was the quality of those anecdotes and how he described him?
Well, there was a time when he mentioned that he had to check in on him because he was unwell and very upset about something that had happened. I remember because he was late to pick me up, and he was explaining why he was late. They were just, it was such a long time ago, but it was just that was his bro, that was his wingman. It was clearly, I'd hear about Ghislaine and I'd hear about Jeffrey. And I met Ghislaine in his house. She would come wafting in and out the home in New York. So he was clearly just someone that he talked about all the time. And again, I met Jeffrey the second time, and we started dating based on the reintroduction that happened at the Plaza Hotel at a Christmas party in 1992 that Donald Trump threw. They were very, very close.
So let's talk about this incident, alleged incident in 1993, where you say that Trump groped you in front of Epstein. I do want to note that CNN has spoken to 3 friends of yours who confirmed that you told them about this alleged incident over past decades. Can you tell me more about what happened that day, and particularly how Trump and Epstein interacted?
Yeah, before I get into the details of what happened, which, obviously I told you guys and I've shared with
Now, I believe this next part, in some regards, now, again, I'm looking for some of the information behind this alleged polygraph, but this gives her more credibility, in my opinion, because she got polygraphed. Now, I want you to think about all these Me Too movement cases, public reports that hundreds of women were being violated. Not saying that they wasn't, but I believe when you're making these very large, egregious allegations, and I don't care the status of a person, I don't care the status of the man, I don't care the status of the woman, but anytime you make these allegations, that there should be some sort of polygraph and just not the statements of someone who can make themselves emotional or non-emotional. There's people at the drop of a dime can make themselves cry, can make themselves weep. And again, this is not to re-victimize the victim, but this is to solidify and verify the claims of the accusations that they put on people, whether they male or female.
multiple outlets, the specifics of the assault that happened. I want to point out that I was polygraphed before I did all this by one of the most renowned examiners in the world. Michael Wolff has hundreds of hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein, where Jeffrey confirmed to Michael what the 2 of them did to me long before I came out and told you all of this. So those are 2 critical data points that you need to have. And now I'll walk you through what happened. I was dating Jeffrey. He was always talking about Donald. It was his bestie and everything. And he was joking about how Donald thought I was hot and Donald thinks I'm this or whatever, wants to talk to you. And he was telling me this as we were taking a walk down Fifth Avenue one day. And he said, let's stop in and see him at his offices. So we went up to his office in Trump Tower. And within a couple of minutes, Donald was outside of his door, and his hands were all over me. They were on my breasts, they were on my butt, they were on, my hips, up and down, while the 2 of them just kept having a normal conversation. I don't remember exactly what was in the conversation. Again, this was, we're talking 90, this is 93 now. It was something about, it was irrelevant. It was like, oh, Stacey's career's on fire. She just did Sports Illustrated again, blah, 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 blah. And they were back and forth, smiling and grinning and carrying on a conversation while Donald ran his hands all over me. And, when that happens in broad daylight in someone's office and an assistant's walking back and forth, you're in shock. If it happens in a dark alleyway, right, you defend yourself. But when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, which is Donald Trump's forte, you go into shock. So I froze, and it was over and very quickly. It was a few minutes. And then we got back in the elevator, and Jeffrey's energy had changed. He was like seething. He was enraged. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. And then we got out on the street on Fifth Avenue, and he looked at me and he just started yelling at me, saying, why did you let him do that? And he was so enraged. And then I remember thinking, like, why did I? I felt like I was coming back into my body at that moment, and I was confused. So that's the story of the assault.
And I do just want to note, Stacey, that Trump has denied these allegations, which you are well aware of. And I know at times you've referenced videos, which we have not confirmed the existence of. But I know that you felt that this was coordinated later when you look back on it. What was it that made you draw that conclusion?
Well, I was sort of known in the industry for being somewhat combative with photographers who would expose themselves or do inappropriate things, or even guys who would touch or harass on the streets. And Jeffrey was aware of that. And I think he was excited. I think the gist in my mind, given what he knew and the way it played out, was, hey, I'm going to deliver this person to you who's actually not going to let you get away with what you do. And I did, because I froze. Like I said, when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, you freeze. And
now, what's important about what she's stating, again, as I stated before, because of the polygraph, because of some of the accounts, even the Michael Wolff interview, that Jeffrey actually, as she stated, confirmed the actions of President Trump, I believe provides her a little more credibility than other accusers. Now, the things that I question is, one, when Jeffrey Epstein supposedly, after leaving the Trump Towers in the visit with President Trump, or Mr. Trump at the time, that he was furious with her because she did not stop Mr. Trump at the time. And that to Jeffrey, it seemed as though that she wanted that attention. Now, again, I believe in some regards, he tried to become the victim and her, be the assailant in conjunction with Trump fondling her and touching her body parts right there in front of her. And again, in those awkward moments, I've heard women kind of go along with it because of fear of some sort, fear of retribution, fear of probably fracturing their relationship between her and Jeffrey. Maybe she really liked Jeffrey, trying to appease his friend by the way of, Mr. Trump at the time. So again, there's a lot to go off, and I don't want to re-victimize a victim when I'm about to state what I'm about to ask here. Because you was a strong advocate for women during that time, and women who were getting sexually assaulted or sexually harassed in some regards. And this was during the day in Trump Towers. And as she stated, there was a secretary, there were people in the office. Why didn't you remove yourself from the situation? Now, and again, I don't know what trauma she might have experienced. Maybe she was trying to figure out what was going on. Even she stated, yeah, I thought, why didn't I stop him? Why didn't I do these things? Again, I understand that people can freeze. So you've been a strong advocate against sexual harassment, and then you become a victim of sexual harassment, allegedly. Why didn't you remove yourself? Why didn't you say anything? I don't know. Again, I know a lot of women may come out against this because I just don't understand. But there's so many accounts. As I said before, I give her credibility because of the lie detector test and because of the Michael Wolff interview with Jeffrey Epstein. So again, there's a lot of accounts that makes her more credible than anybody else who just come out and made accusations against Mr. Trump and President Trump. Okay. So again, I don't want to go too further than that, but I think it's very important to analyze. Ever since the Me Too movement, I do not believe women should have any fear, even though I know it still exists, depending on the position and status of a man, the influence of a man, the money of a man, can all be intimidating. But I'm telling all women, come out against those accusers who sexually harass, sexually abuse, sexually assault, anything dealing that harms you in any sort of way. It needs to be reported, because again, in the court of public opinion, every act or non-act will be scrutinized and analyzed to a fact that may free a lot of people that have persecuted you, and that should not go unpunished. If you are taking advantage of men or women, but in this case with women, and you are a man of influence, you're a man of status, you're a man of great power, you're a man with a lot of money, with a lot of resources, I don't care where you are, who you are, and how much you have in your bank account. That should not stop you from being persecuted and prosecuted to the full extent of the law.